The Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps has been the host of many incredible Grand Prix over the years in Formula 1, and hopefully we're going to see a repeat of that this weekend too. But let's have a look to the past before we end up hopefully going to the future and getting an incredible race this weekend by looking at the 5 most incredible Formula 1 moments around Spa in the Belgian Grand Prix. So my number one pick, well my first pick I should say, is the crash in 1998. This start line crash was unbelievable. For a start, it was incredibly wet at Spa, as it so often is. The track was basically covered in fog pretty much, and I don't think nowadays they would even run in those conditions. And it's fair enough really, because off the start line, David Coulthard, I think he ended up going over a drain cover, spun his car out into Eddie Irvine and caused the biggest pile-up I have ever seen in Formula 1. Pretty much the entire field was impacted by this, and if we didn't have spare T cars as well back in those days, about half the field would have been wiped off the race before we even restarted. Of course the red flags came out and they eventually restarted, but it delayed the start by a couple hours at least. And I'm going to continue in a similar vein for my second pick. It's the start line crash and the side-by-side 4 wide at the top of Kemmel moment in 2018. Now this race is important to me because I was actually there. I was there on the hill by the bus stop chicane at the back of the circuit, but I saw on the screens what was happening in front of me. Now, there were 2 moments in all of this really, moment 2A and moment 2B if you will. 2A was the fact there was a nasty crash where Nico Hulkenberg locked up into last source, hit the back of Fernando Alonso, who was catapulted over the top of Charles Leclerc's Sauber. And if it wasn't for the halo, Charles Leclerc probably would not be with us anymore because Alonso's car came crashing down on the top of Leclerc's. That was the moment where I thought where I found out that I was dead wrong when it came to the halo in Formula 1. We absolutely need it, and it should be there, and it should be there forever now. Not going to get rid of that. But also at the same time, at the front of the pack, you had a 4 wide moment between Sir Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, Sergio Perez and Esteban Ocon at the top of Kemmel. It was an unbelievable sight to behold, and it could have genuinely meant that we saw a victory for Racing Point in their very short Formula 1 tenureship. Or it might have been Force India at that time, I don't know. It was around the time when things were going into administration, a bit crazy to be honest. Next up, we have the incredible charge through the pack that Max Verstappen did in 2022. I think Max started at the back of the grid because of some sort of engine penalty that sent him back there, and he ended up starting about 14th in the end because of other penalties too. Despite that though, he showed incredible pace to come through and just bossed the race. I think by a lap 10 he was in first, and he never looked like relinquishing his lead after that. Say what you will about Max, you know, it's all the car and all this and that, but that was very much the moment where Max Verstappen won the title in 22 because Charles Leclerc could not hold a candle to the guy despite Verstappen starting so far down the grid. And we sort of saw something similar all the way back in 1995. Michael Schumacher crashed out in qualifying and therefore started down in 16th position. He was battling with Damon Hill for the title that year. Hill started near the front, but a dry, wet, I mean, just kept changing the weather all the time. That kind of race meant that Schumacher actually managed to get ahead of Damon Hill. Now, there were some very dirty moves by Schumacher during that race. I implore you, go back and watch it if you've never seen it before. It's an all-time classic in my opinion, and a very controversial one for sure. But what cannot be denied is that Michael Schumacher showed why he was such a good driver during that race. The pace he was showing on a wet track with dry tyres was unbelievable. How he managed to keep Damon Hill behind, who was on the optimum tyres for the conditions, I will never know. It was ridiculous. But yeah, Schumacher ended up winning from 16th on the grid. His lowest down victory ever in his career, and one of the lowest down in the history of Formula 1 too. And the last moment, of course, I have to choose the man, the myth, the legend, that is Mika Hakkinen. I love Mika to bits. He's one of my favourite drivers of all time, a double world champion, and the only man that Michael Schumacher was afraid of during his career. And this was probably the moment that scared him the most. Schumacher was ahead of Mika Hakkinen in the latter stages of the race. There weren't too many laps left. Now, this was back in the days when you could not, when most people thought you couldn't go up the Eau Rouge Raidillon section flat out. However, Mika Hakkinen became one of the first drivers to ever do this, and as a result ended up passing Michael Schumacher thanks to Ricardo Zonta's BAR Honda getting in the way of both of them. One of the most iconic overtakes and images ever in Formula One, and the embodiment of Finnish Sisu if I've ever seen it. What a move, what a driver, what a race. Definitely go back and watch the 2000 Belgian Grand Prix if you ever get a chance. It's one of the best races of the 21st century in Formula One, in my humble opinion. But yes, guys, there we go. Those are my 5 moments. I could choose 10, 20, 30 of them. I love Spa-Francorchamps, and I hope you do too. And I hope we have a great race this weekend. And who knows, maybe one of the moments from the 2024 race could make it onto this list next year. Right, who's your prediction to win the Belgian Grand Prix this weekend? Let us know in the comments below. And for much more content on Formula One racing, do keep it tuned right here to the F1Chronicle.com.